Well, this is our room in Normandy. It's a bit odd. This is where you come in, and when you come in, we open this, and there's the toilet. No sink in there, so after you get up out of the toilet, you have to come over and go to the bathroom to wash your hands. Which seems a little bit odd, but I guess that's the way the French does it. This is sort of the view out the window. You see some boats heading out to the ocean there. People walking along the way. Last night we could see people parasailing over on the other side of that hill right there. And then the other odd thing is the bathroom is all glass, no privacy. This is the shower, and this is the tub. But that's the French way, I guess. Sort of be all out in the open. And that is what our room looks like in Normandy.
We're walking up to the visitor center at Pointe du Hoc. Just got off the bus. It's about 9:30 on Sunday morning. Beautiful morning. French owl going off there.
Somebody's in the bushes.
Yeah.
So you see the people that work here, like I think they sell mostly the A, B, and C, you know, the
This is the visitor center. This is actually U.S. soil. France ceded this area to the U.S. Monuments Commission. So this little bit of soil here is U.S. territory. And you have to go through airport type security to get into the visitor center. Say hi, Russ.
Good morning.
Ships offshore, primarily battleship USS Texas, began bombarding the point. And as they bombarded the point, they were supposed to drop the shells on top of the plateau,
Oh,
and they were to neutralize the German artillery pieces, which by then had been moved and were no longer here. But several of those artillery shells, they fell short, and they impacted the face of the cliff. And then you had a 14-inch shell with 300 pounds of explosives in it that blew up and caused subsidence, and so part of the cliff face collapsed. And it produced this debris pile. When the first Ranger landing craft came ashore on the beach and the door opened, they had landing craft that were made by the British that had an armored door. And when that armored door opened, they looked out and there was a debris pile, and the Rangers simply scrambled up the debris pile. And it went almost to the top. When they reached the top of the debris pile, they had less than 20 feet to get to the top of the cliff. And the first Rangers to include one of the first NCOs up was Len Lamel. He's the man that I mentioned earlier. He's the one that would ultimately locate the guns, and with another Ranger, they would disable them. Len Lamel, his story was that when he got there, he simply climbed up the debris pile, looked up, he had about 10 more feet, and he sort of just hand over hand climbed up. So he didn't have any use of a rope, he didn't have a ladder. They would ultimately use the ropes and ladders, but that would come after the battle. That was when they had like a supply line, like a logistical support line that went back to the cliff face, back down to the beach, and they were hauling ammunition and supplies, and they had to take the.
There we are coming down to the point. There's the channel out there, and our group. Here we are at the point. About 100 feet above the beach.
Okay.
And apparently none of what you see in the movies in the attack really happened. Yeah, we're up on the cliff. A lot of big holes, which I assume are shell or bomb craters. And there's Gerard. And here we are. Omaha Beach is down that way, and Utah is down that way. This is one of the mounts where the guns were before they were pulled back before D-Day. The observation bunker and the actual Pointe du Hoc. Again, walking along here, another one of the either shell or bomb craters. They're huge. There's one. This is a little better view of how far they had to climb up. And that's on up toward Omaha. And the Ranger Battalion Memorial. A gun emplacement.
One of the best, most well-made pieces of equipment that were issued were socks.
These were designated beach exits, and they were numbered D1 and D3 in the dog sector, and E1 and E3 in the easy sector. And then those sectors were subdivided from there: dog green, dog white, and so on. Easy red, easy green, so on. This is where the casualties for the American U.S. Army 5th Corps were the highest on D-Day. And we'll step off and visit the National Guard Memorial, where you get to see the flags flying. Look at this is where they are. We'll step off, and we'll have an ample amount of time. It's just now 11 o'clock.
Man, what a view.
And we think that they had also been, to some extent, over time. I think I've already mentioned how everything that could go wrong went wrong. So that all of those things ended up being effective. And it produces results here worse than anywhere else.
So the early bombing didn't hit here. It was too far. Or?
In some places it was too far in. In some places it was right on target.
Here we are down in Omaha,
And so the gun's been pulled back inside the bunker. When the gun was,
you can see it, but there's an 88 in there.
this weapon was effective fire. We're looking down the entire length of the beach. And so
Here is Russ.
Ben's background is two houses. Right on the outside. This weapon will take Americans and on the other end of the beach where those two houses are.
You can just barely see some yellow markers out there. And they said that at low tide was about 400 yards beyond that. So they had half a mile of beach to cross. And you gotta climb that.
All the plaque is saying is that it was the seawall extended from here straight over to that bunker. And that seawall was blown by the engineers of the 121st Engineer Combat Battalion on D-Day. And they put the plaque up to remember the fact that they had done that. An interesting detail I would point out further to that is that inside that bunker, we can't get inside it because the gun's in there and they put the chains and fencing up. But there's a great deal of damage on the inside of the back wall, where rounds have sailed through that opening and struck the back wall of the bunker. And what we think happened was that eventually, later in the morning, a Sherman tank landed on Omaha Beach, but it was not.
So
Look
you
at
can
the
see
spot.
the
It's
coast.
the
You can
spot where
see some of the
General Coda
emplacements that
got
are
the
still
men up.
there.
Rangers
Right up
lead the
there,
way, and
right.
they got to the top, and they reached
But
the
it's a
top of the
mile.
bluff and then attacked this way. It was a mile this way. It was basically far
All
enough
this was
for
the
them to
bluffs
be
until
almost completely
this,
out
and
of
this is
range
what they had to
of
get.
automatic. What's out there now? The jetty for the temporary harbor made it almost out to that boat. There are still a few pieces of it out there. We just
This
can't
is-
see them now because
this
it's high
is all that's
tide.
left of
At
the
low tide,
harbor
you'll see a
that
little
was
bit of it out of the water.
pulled in.
And that was the American Mulberry Harbor that they called Mulberry A, Mulberry Out. That house it's a 12-bedroom house, so it's a massive thing. And not a single window in that house was broken, despite the fact that it was between in the middle of this raging battle. Some of the houses that were here crept a little bit further out toward the road, and they were ultimately demolished by the Germans. So that gun that was at the National Guard Memorial, that's a gun bunker. That's a bunker with a gun in it. The memorial is on top of it. The gun in that bunker, that was pretty. There's a shirtless man just there for your entertainment, I think. He looks quite proud of himself, in fact. But that gun, they wanted to clear the field of fire for that gun, and so they demolished some of the houses that were closer up on the beach road. And again, this beach road was absolutely here at the time. The houses that you're seeing now that are back a little bit farther, those houses were all left intact. They didn't interfere with the field of fire of the gun, and so the Germans left them, and the result is that here they are. They're still here to this very day. And in the preliminary photo reconnaissance images that were collected throughout 1943, these houses are here. People are not living in them because the Germans had evacuated everyone, because the Germans began building this series of resistance points, what we call Widerstandsnest. And there were 12 of them, from the farthest eastern extent of Omaha Beach to the one that we just visited at the National Guard Memorial. Now, look at the monstrosity that's on the right side of the coach now. That is the Grande Villa Hardelais, and that is a house that was built long before World War II. This house was completely untouched by the vicious battles that unfolded around it on June 6th, and it's still there today, and you can rent it. It's a vacation rental.
Oh, wow.
So you and at least 12 of your closest friends, maybe even more than that, you can push the number up to 24, I think. You can rent that for just 2,900 euros a week during the high season, which
That's
doesn't
not
seem like
bad.
it's a bad deal, actually.
No, it's not.
And in terms of real estate, you couldn't ask for a better view. You couldn't ask for a better location. I just don't know about all these people that are out there swimming today. I mean, it's warm, but it's not that warm. We're going to slow the coach down here in a moment, and I'm going to point out a couple of things.
Oh my God.
And what I want to point out specifically, we want to get up here where we don't have so many hedges blocking the view, but if you look to the right of the coach now, what you're seeing is the area where this group was able to get off the beach and reach the top of the bluff. And that was a group that was led by the assistant division commander for the 29th Infantry Division, a man named Norman Coda. General Coda got off the beach. He drew light small arms fire. He led a small group up here to the area where the driveways are now. This all was mined. He and his men got through the mines, reached the base of the bluff, and as they were assembling at the base of the bluff, a group of Rangers walked up. When General Coda asked them, "Who are you?" A man named Max Schneider said, "I'm Captain Max Schneider, 5th Ranger Battalion." And General Coda said, "Perfect timing, Captain. We're about to kick off this assault, and I expect the Rangers to lead the way." A famous quote from a famous location. The path that they then followed as they moved off the beach and up to the top of the bluff it's a coming into view on our right, just ahead of us right now, but you'll see halfway up the bluff, there's a little shack, and that shack is built right along this goat path. And it's the goat path that Max Schneider, Norman Coda, and this group of men made it off of the beach, over the sand dunes, and then up to the top of the bluff, using the existing goat path to get there. You see it right now? Just there, halfway up, just above the French flag.
You can see the topography change.
Yeah, and this was just sort of fortuitous. General Cotto was supposed to land back at the D1 draw where we were just now, and instead he was landed about a mile east of it so that they would avoid all of the punishing gunfire. And fortuitously, they landed in front of this area where there was a goat path that led them all the way up the bluff. And if you look now, as we go around, you can see back behind that shack, you can see that path much more clearly. And by seeing it, you can appreciate how easy it was for them to use that path as a means of getting off the beach. They weren't.
Here I'm behind the beach at Omaha, and this is a walk down. And here we are. I'm sure the bathers out there weren't here on June 6th. But I get to fulfill a lifelong dream of walking on Omaha Beach. This was one end of the beach, and then it stretched all the way down this way, all the way down the coast. And where we were before is down near those bluffs down there. But I'm here. It's been exciting. It's been a great day. Beautiful weather. And the tide is up. It's just now starting to recede. We have the ocean. And we have Bill from our trip. And the sand dunes behind the beach. And the bluffs you can see in the distance. There's a monument up here. I came back to the bus. Oh, there's Russ walking down. And there's a bunker here. Oh, it's got an 88 sticking out of it. Oh, wow. And then there's a path on up to the bluff. There's our bus there. But over on the other side of the dunes is where I was standing on the beach. We're coming to the cemetery in Normandy.
One thing that you see now a lot is that cruise ships come into Le Havre, and they'll bus everybody from the cruise ship here, and they bypass this back garden. I love to start here because there are too many great stories here. And so I thought we'd just, as we're walking up to the memorial, I thought we'd sweep down the wall, and I'd show you what this is, because what you're seeing on the remains of the wall here, 1,357 Americans who mostly remain missing today. What you're going to see are a large number of these Americans listed here. You'll see that by his name there is a rosette. And when you see the rosette, that's an indication of, that's a person who at the end of World War II, he was missing, and he was since found and identified after 1956, because this was all completed as a part of the conversion of the cemetery to a permanent place of burial that was completed by 1956. And so if it was after that and they found the body and identified it, they simply marked it with a rosette. But you see some really heartbreaking stories. And where's Orlo Montgomery right there? Orlo Montgomery is an interesting case because that's a case we're working on currently that I'm involved with. He was the radio operator on a C-47 Skytrain that was shot down before dawn on D-Day, and the airplane went down. The pilot, the co-pilot bailed out and survived. There was a dead paratrooper on board the airplane, and Orlo Montgomery was dead inside the airplane, and they ultimately recovered their bodies. And the paratrooper was recovered and is buried out here, identified because he had his dog tag on. we know that Orlo Montgomery was on that airplane, and they found a body on that airplane. It didn't have any identifying information on it, though. For whatever reason, he had no dog tag, and so he is buried out here as one of the unknowns, and then listed here.
How many unknowns are there?
The number of it's 222 unknowns are buried out here, and so we know which unknown he is, by the way, because when they buried him. This man was associated with the crash site of C-4742-23638, and so we know which unknown he is, and the paperwork has been filed to prove this case, and hopefully convince the ABMC to put a rosette by his name, and then I put a new headstone in that identifies him.
And here we are. You want to sit right now, or you still like that? Okay. You want me to take a picture or to take a video?
Well, she's going to take the video. If you wouldn't mind taking
Nice to meet you,
the
sir.
Okay.
Okay, so good afternoon to you all. My name's Anthony. I just want to run through the ceremony that we're going to undertake together this afternoon so that, as it were, we're all reading off the same page. At the start of the ceremony, I'll formally welcome you to the Normandy American Cemetery, and then I'll ask you please to turn and we'll face the American flags. Obviously today is a special occasion. It's the anniversary of 9/11. And coupled obviously with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. So the flags are at half-mast for those two special reasons. So we will face the flags. I'll ask you to remove your headgear, and we will then play the American national anthem. You may sing your anthem. You're our guests here today. Please feel free to do so. Following the national anthem, we will then turn. I will ask you to turn and face the statue behind me, the spirit of American youth rising from the waves. And at that stage, I'll ask your two representatives if they kindly lay the wreath at the base of the statue. They'll remain there, and we will then play the taps, and there'll be a moment of silence thereafter, no more than 30 seconds. Following that, I'll conclude the ceremony with a suitable form of words at the end. Everybody clear? Yes. Excellent, good. So let's make a start. So good afternoon to you all. Welcome to the Normandy American Cemetery. Welcome on behalf of our American Superintendent, Mr. Scott Desjardins. Mr. Desjardins lives and works on this historic site. The Normandy American Cemetery comes under the auspices, it comes under the umbrella of the ABMC, the American Battle Monuments Commission. The commission was established by an act of Congress in the year 1923, established for three principal reasons: to highlight the service, the achievements, and as we can collectively see here before us this afternoon, the sacrifice of American servicemen and women. And the starting point that the ABMC took was the year 1917, an important year for the United States. It was the year when they entered the First World War. So today the organization is responsible for the management of 26 cemeteries worldwide, all of them located outside of the United States, and at the same time for the upkeep of 32 memorials, similar to the one that I have behind me here today, 5 of which are actually located in the United States. So we thank you for coming here today, and in your own personal and quiet way, paying your respects to the 9,389 young American servicemen and women who fell during the Battle of Normandy, who were buried before us. Whilst at the same time, not forgetting behind me here, in the Garden of the Missing, engraved on the walls of the missing, are a further 1,557 additional names. Young men who perished during the Battle of Normandy, whose bodies were never recovered. Where are they? Well, as you probably understand, the vast majority of them are resting at sea. So now what I'd like to do is to start the ceremony. I'd like you please to turn. We will face the American flags, and we will play the national anthem. As I say, please feel free to participate. Karen, hymne national, s'il vous plaît. could ask you please to turn to face the memorial. We will now play the taps and the sounds. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for participating in that moment of quiet contemplation. For my part, I'd just like to close this afternoon ceremony by sharing with you some words which were written by the then French President, President René Coty. The occasion was the inauguration, the opening ceremony of this self-same cemetery on the 19th of July 1956. And René Coty wrote these words: "These young men who sleep their last sleep here have earned in history their places in the first rank of conquerors. When the survivors returned home, the dead remained together in brotherhood as they were in battle. Let us ponder the great lessons which we learned from their tombs. We do not forget, we shall never forget, the infinite debt of gratitude that we owe to those who have given all for our freedom." So on those poignant words of President René Coty, I'd just like to once again thank you for your visit here today. I hope it's going to be a positive one. You brought the sun with you, please stay. And it just remains for me to wish you a safe journey home, to wherever home might be, to each and every one of you. Thank you.